In this presentation, I will explain how to paraphrase a paragraph. Before I begin, I want to review the difference between writing a summary and a paraphrase, and then I will show you how to paraphrase. So let's review some of the things we talked about last week. If you remember, when we summarize or paraphrase, for both, we always use our own words. And then, when you summarize and paraphrase, you want to make sure your interpretation of the text is the same as what the author intended. Now, if you remember when we talked about a summary is always shorter than the original text. However, a paraphrase can be longer or shorter than the original text. So length in a paraphrase is not really an issue. A summary only includes the main idea. However, in a paraphrase, you include the main idea and the supporting details. This is one of the most important elements that makes summarizing and paraphrasing different. When you summarize, you typically cover a large section of the text. For example, you might be asked to summarize a few pages or summarize a whole chapter or maybe even a whole section. Now, when you are asked to paraphrase, you typically are asked to paraphrase just a small section of the text, like a paragraph. The reason is because in a paraphrase, you are including the supporting details. So typically, you would not be asked to paraphrase a very long text. It's going to usually be just a paragraph or two, versus summarizing covers a large section. So because we're focusing on paraphrasing in this presentation, then keep these things in mind. Use your own words. Your interpretation of the text must be the same as what the author intended. It can be longer or shorter than the original text, so length is not an issue. It will include the main idea and the supporting details, and then it covers a small section of the text. So again, you only paraphrase a paragraph, not a whole section or chapter. Let's go ahead and go back to the example of the article Elements of Culture. Now, for the assignment that you will actually do is it's going to be on the article Pursuit of Happiness, but I'm using Elements of Culture from Unit 1 just as an example. So I chose this paragraph from this article, and if I'm correct, I want to say this is like the second or third paragraph in the first section of Elements of Culture. But we're going to work with this one today so I can show you how to paraphrase this paragraph. This paragraph says values help shape a society by suggesting what is good and bad, beautiful and ugly, sought or avoided. Consider the value that the United States places upon youth. Children represent innocence and purity, while youthful adult appearance signifies sexuality. Shaped by this value, individuals spend millions of dollars each year on cosmetic products and surgeries to look young and beautiful. The United States also has an individualistic culture, meaning people place a high value on individuality and independence. In contrast, many other countries are collectivists, meaning the welfare of the group and the group relationships are a primary value. Now, what I just read to you was the original text. So what I'm going to show you in this slide is how I'm taking the original text and how I'm going to paraphrase it. So what I did was when I read through this, I want to make sure I have an understanding of what the author intended. Because again, when you summarize or paraphrase, it's very important that your interpretation is the same as what the author is trying to say. So in the first section of the paragraph, when I read through it, I kind of broke it up into chunks. And this first chunk says values help shape a society by suggesting what is good and bad, beautiful and ugly, sought or avoided. So what I did was I paraphrased this first chunk and I put it in my own words. And so I put down a society is formed by values. Ways values form a society can imply morals one should follow, define what is and is not pleasing to the eyes, and things that one should or should not seek. So notice I am saying the exact same thing as what the original text has said. Only I have two sentences and I'm much more wordy than what the original text had. And that is absolutely okay. Because remember, when you paraphrase, length doesn't matter. So it could be shorter or it could be longer. And in my paraphrase, because I use my own words, I chose to be a little bit more wordy with how I described it. And notice how it uses, like, for example, uses words like good and bad. So instead of me using the same words, I put down morals one should follow, and then beautiful and ugly, I put down define what is and is not pleasing to the eyes. So again, I'm using my own words. Let's look at another chunk in the paragraph. Consider the value that the United States places upon youth. Children represent innocence and purity, while a youthful adult appearance signifies sexuality. How did I paraphrase this chunk? Well, I put down one example of a value in the U.S. is the implication that comes with youth. Children are viewed as innocent, while a youthful look equates to sexuality. So again, I am using my own words, but there were a few words that I did use that were the same. For example, the original text uses the word innocence. I used the word innocent, okay? Sometimes there aren't many words that you can replace it with. And so you have to, if there aren't other synonyms, then it's okay to use that. Another example is sexuality. I didn't want to try to find another word because then when I was looking at the thesaurus, it really stretched the meaning and I didn't want to do that. So because of that, I kept the word sexuality in there. However, you can see that overall in this section, in this chunk here, I really use my own words. Let's look at another chunk. Shaped by this value, individuals spend millions of dollars each year on cosmetic products and surgeries to look young and beautiful. My paraphrase on this, because of this value, people spend a lot of money to maintain a youthful look. So if you look at this paraphrase here, my paraphrase is much shorter than the original text, okay? The United States also has an individualistic culture, meaning people place a high value on individuality and independence. My paraphrase for this paragraph, another example of a value Americans embrace is individualism. Individualism focus on oneself, so individuality and independence is important. And then my last chunk here, my paraphrase of the last chunk, I put down, on the other hand, other culture are less individualistic and more collectivistic. Collectivism focus on putting the needs of others or the group before oneself. So again, you can see that I'm really using my own language and on my own words, and I'm also ensuring that I'm saying exactly the same thing as what the author intended. So when you look at this, I'm going to go through my checklist. You'll see, did I use my own words? Yes, I did. Do my paraphrase say the same thing as the author's intended meaning? Yes, it does. Does my paraphrase include the main idea? You'll see here that here's the main idea for the original text, and here's the main idea of my paraphrase. And then does my paraphrase include supporting details? Yes, it does. So basically here you'll see in the black text, you'll see this is the original text straight from the textbook, and then the red is my paraphrase of the paragraph. And now the only difference between what I showed you in the previous slide and this slide is I put it back into a paragraph format. So keep in mind that when you are paraphrasing, keep those things in mind, that it is not about length. It can be shorter, it can be longer. You must make sure that what your paraphrase is saying means the same thing as what the author is saying, and you want to use your own words. And so the more that you use your own words, the better it is. And sometimes there are some vocabulary words that you just can't replace and you have to use the same one, and that's okay.